We'll call the meeting to order at this time. And item 1B, the adoption of the agenda. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second,
Second.
please cast your vote and then check the screen to ensure that your vote has been calculated properly. All right, please ensure that your vote has been calculated properly. Motion passes. Before we begin, I would just like to, first of all, thank our teachers for reaching out and letting us hear from you and for being present to speak in person. We really appreciate you. And then I would also like to say I'll be filling in for our Vice Chairman, Carlotta Bailey, as she has lost her mother. So if you all keep her in your thoughts and prayers during this time. The online or the in-person public comments, we have 15 who have signed up to speak publicly. And so according to policy, you'll each get 2 minutes to speak. So I'm going to call multiple names. And so if you would line up so that we can keep the flow going, that'd be appreciated. I'm going to start with Mr. Patrick Martin, Mary Runyon, Eileen Fernandez Parker, and Margaret Hale.
Everybody, my name is Patrick Martin. I'm a CCSD parent and teacher, and I'm here today to follow up on the Teacher Compensation Task Force recommendation of a starting salary for CCSD teachers of $58,000. We think this would ensure the best teachers for our students and that those teachers could afford to live in Charleston. We knew getting to that salary would be difficult, if not impossible, in this budget cycle. So we proposed that the district provide at least a $7,000 pay increase to ensure a livable wage for CCSD teachers, with a plan to get to $58,000 in the next 2 years. This would mean we could attract new teachers with a starting salary of $50,000 and retain teachers in the middle of their careers too. This proposal has been supported and echoed by dozens of speakers at these meetings. This proposal has been supported by hundreds of written public comments to this board, and almost 3,000 people, actually over 3,000 people now, have signed a petition, which not only spells out the raise, but also proposed millage of 14.5 increase. Then last week at the Audit and Finance Committee, the district said that it would not be possible to get to a $7,000 increase. So I'm here today to tell you that if we can't get to that increase, it would be imperative to get to an increase of at least $5,000 with the proposed bonus of $5,000 from the ESSER funds to help us retain our teachers from leaving to neighboring districts. Berkeley has already issued $5,000 checks to their employees and a proposed 6.5% pay increase to their salary next year. Beaufort increased their salary to $50,000 last year. Here we are in the wealthiest and most expensive place to live in the state, and the teachers have no clear idea if they will be able to afford their rent in the coming year. We are here today hoping that you will tell us what we can expect for ourselves and for our families and for our students in the coming year. Thank you for your service to our county, to our students, our schools. We appreciate your work.
And also, please state your name.
Good afternoon. Mr. Grabowski, I love your comment in the paper this morning. It's the hardest job you've ever had, and I thank you all for all the hard work that you put into work with our school board. But I'm here today because when I watched the committee of the whole meeting on Friday, last week, I walked away with a sense of urgency, having walked in those shoes for many years in Charleston County. And the urgency became even clearer. On last week, we had 164 vacancies advertised. Today, we have 171. There are 59 at elementary, 57 at middle, and 55 at our high schools. That's a lot. There are only about 28 work days between now and August the 1st. There are about 38 work days from now till August the 16th when teachers return. So you can appreciate the urgency that this brings to us. Our principals are working very hard, and summertime was never an easy time for principals or for me as a principal. The master schedules have to be completed. They have to align the allocation of teacher numbers with the number of students. And that master schedule is really important because if they haven't hired and filled those positions, then that means classrooms are overcrowded. And that's not what we want for our students. Pardon me. The third thing that I want to bring to your attention, that it's a myth that teachers work a 40-hour work week. Having been there and watched them 10 to 20 hours in addition to their 40 hours, they have meetings with colleagues, they plan instruction. If they have IEPs, they have to write those as well as meet with parents, their extracurricular activities. So when we ask for additional compensation for them, it's reasonable. Thank you for your time and good luck to you.
Please state your name for us.
Good afternoon. My name is Eileen Fernandez Parker. I want to thank you for your service to our schools. I'm a 33-year public school educator with experience as a consultant and also a small business owner. Presently, I work at Stall High School as an instructional coach. I left my consulting job to come back into education, and I'm wondering if I made a mistake. I want to share some information regarding the initiatives to raise teacher salaries. When I moved from Pennsylvania, I was making $90,000 at the 18th step, and I took literally a 50% pay cut. I was making 45 when I came here. Now I'm making 73 grand. I haven't even reached the 90 grand that I was making 15 years ago, right? And with our pay scale, I would never reach that anyway. So the pandemic changed everything. Remote jobs are now abundant. There are over 3,000 instructional designer jobs online right now, and more than half are remote. So when teachers are trying to decide, should I stay home and work remotely and still fulfill my love of instructional design, they can do it. And the pay for that job is 50 to 100 grand. And when teachers leave K-12, taking their certificate from them is not a strategy because it doesn't matter. So what I need to ask you to do is start playing chess instead of checkers. We can't keep doing just what's the next thing that we can put a Band-Aid on. We have to be thinking strategy with chess because this is a serious issue. Thank you very much.
Good afternoon. My name is Margaret Beth Hale. I've been a teacher librarian in Charleston County for 22 years. I'm also the parent to a rising 10th grader and 6th grader who have attended CCSD schools since they were 4 years old. I'm here today to urge and implore you to pass the $5,000 equal raise across all years of experience and education levels on the salary schedule, along with the $5,000 ESSER bonus. And also please work to develop a plan to increase those starting salaries to $58,000 with equal increases across the schedule within the next 2 years. I was here almost exactly 3 months ago in March, and I literally spilled my guts about the financial challenges my family faces on a teacher and public librarian salary. Excuse me. It was embarrassing to share, but I recognized that it was important to do so. So today I decided not to talk about myself, but the incredible teachers my children have had who all deserve a livable wage. I have a very unique position because I'm a teacher in the elementary school that both of my children attended. So I got a front row seat to see the love and energy that were poured into my kids every day and the work, so much hard work. Now, my older teachers' children, they had classroom plays, hosted math scientist nights, and they crafted these journals that I still have and will treasure forever. My youngest daughter, CD teachers, taught her how to be in school. She was not an easy one. And they taught her this art unit from Jackson Pollock to Monet and the most incredible works of art I still have. And all the way to her 5th grade teacher this year who built such a family community. The last day of school, they were all literally crying, shedding tears. They also taught them to read and did complex math that's beyond my abilities. So both of my daughters of these elementary school teachers, 4 have left the profession, and that is out of 14. This year, 3 more of my colleagues are leaving the profession. My high schooler's favorite teacher for this year, she is leaving teaching. We're losing incredible teachers that are young and my age. Why aren't more teachers here? Because this is really hard. It's hard and humbling to stand up and ask for more money. But when we chose this profession, we didn't think 22 years in that we would still be struggling. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And so the next 4, AJ Barnes, Jody Stallings, Kauchia Gathers, Judith Condon.
Good afternoon. My name is AJ Barnes. I currently serve as high school recruiter. I'm a former CCSD Teacher of the Year and current member of the Teacher Compensation Task Force. I first want to begin by offering a sincere thank you to the Audit and Finance Committee this past week, and also to that of Mr. Kennedy's team and the rest of the district staff that worked extremely hard to put together all of those scenarios. I'm extremely encouraged to hear confirmation of a recommendation for a $5,000 salary increase across every step, while including a step for next year's salary schedule. We're also cautiously optimistic that there's a conversation around exploring additional ESSER incentives that could be used as bonuses for teachers. But today I come before you to stress the urgency of the matter, in which we must commit to a sound salary schedule as soon as possible that our current and future teachers deserve. I want to share with you what has transpired since our last board meeting on May 22nd. Serving as a member of the recruitment team, we have seen at every level, elementary, middle, and high school, potential new teachers decline contracts that were offered. And that number is somewhere close to 10. And in every one of these situations, the scenario fell under 2 categories. 1, out-of-state candidates, after crunching numbers, just simply couldn't make the current salary numbers work to justify a move. Many of these candidates were certified in highly sought-after certification areas like Spanish, math, and special ed, many of which we still have open vacancies. Reason number 2, candidates accepted a position in a neighboring district because that district has already set their salary structure for next year. This also doesn't take into account the candidates who we've built relationships with and are currently interviewing and still took positions other places. I simply want to wrap it up and ask you that I realize that this could linger into July, but for recruiters and principals, as Mrs. Runyon just said, this is our peak season. And we need to put qualified teachers in front of our students. Thank you.
Katisha Gathers, Hunley Park Elementary School Principal. Good afternoon. I'm here to speak on behalf of the teachers in the schools they serve. I'm here to ask for your support in passing the budget, which will allow an increase in teacher salaries of $5,000 and teacher bonuses of $5,000. The salary proposal is about retaining and attracting the best candidates at the school level. Our teachers are the backbone of our education system, and they deserve to be compensated fairly for their hard work and dedication. The salary increase and bonus will help us fully staff early this summer and avoid the loss of teachers who leave to pursue opportunities in other districts that offer higher salaries and bonuses, and also who have confirmed their salary schedule. I believe that our teachers deserve to have a salary that allows them to live and to support themselves and their families. This increase in salary will make a significant difference in their lives and the lives of their families. The budget increase and the bonus will help me attract and retain the best teachers who are passionate about their work and committed to the success of their students. I also urge you to consider the impact of delayed budget approval of our ability to fill non-classroom teachers, positions that are critical to our student support system, such as our lead teacher, math coach, and math interventionist. Many schools like Hunley Park are currently holding these teachers in vacant teacher positions, knowing that they want to transition into non-classroom roles. If the budget does not get approved in a timely manner, we may not be able to recruit the best candidates for those positions as well, which will impact our students' academic progress. Therefore, I ask you to pass the budget for the 23-24 school year as soon as possible to ensure that we can ensure the best teaching talent for our schools. Thank you for your time and your commitment to supporting the education of our students.
Good afternoon. My name is Judith Condon. I'm the proud principal of Angel Oak Elementary School, and I am also a CCSD parent, which I'm very proud of also. You keep hearing over and over again, the 5K and 5K. We've got to do something to support our teachers. With the last audit and finance committee, we felt like things are moving on the right track, and we're just here today to make sure that we continue down the right track. You keep hearing words like urgency, livable wages, commitment, and it's time to follow through with that. Teachers are our most valuable asset in supporting our most important stakeholders, our students and families. So I urge you to make this investment. I won't take up much more of your time, but I will end by saying, keep the best of the best in our classrooms and attract the best of the best to our district. Thank you.
Sonia Rains, Jason Sacran, Patricia Travis, Stephanie, I know I'm going to say your last name wrong, Magoni.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Sonia Rains and I am an instructional coach at a middle school in Charleston County. I am also a proud parent of CCSD students. As an instructional coach, I'd like to remind everybody that I am paid as a 190-day employee on a teacher salary. However, my contract states my position as reading coach. But I do more than what the title reading coach implies. Being that I am in a middle school, I work with all teachers, including math, computers, and science. As a matter of fact, last year I co-taught in math. The year before that, during the pandemic, I taught those students who were not showing up virtually to their regular classes. I do many things as a coach, but to summarize, I assist and support teachers and students with instruction and learning. I may not have classroom rosters, but what I do every day directly affects students. Please do not overlook coaches when discussing pay raises and bonuses. Although our salary is from the teacher salary schedule, we do not receive the annual state supply check afforded to teachers, school counselors, and media specialists due to a loophole in the Read to Succeed Act. We also do not receive substitute pay if we have to sub for an absent teacher. It is important for everyone to know that what I do in my building may not be exactly what a coach does in another building, because we all have different needs, but the direct impact on student achievement is relatively the same. Research states the biggest impact on student achievement is collective teacher efficacy. It is the belief that together teachers can achieve more, especially if they believe that they can. And I can tell you that that belief is wavering. Collective efficacy begins with trust. It is where a community trusts and believes in each other's abilities and values the work that they do. As my community members, do you trust me? Do you believe in me? Do you value me? Thank you.
Good afternoon, board chair members. Thank you for allowing me the opportunity to share a few comments with you all today. My name is Jason Sacran. I'm here today as a parent, as a business owner, and a fellow elected official. First of all, I want to thank you for your service to our community. I know this job isn't easy, and many times you're damned if you do and you're damned if you don't. 2021-22 school year, my son had 3 teachers over the course of the year. 3 different teaching styles, 3 different learning styles, and that was coming at the tail end of COVID. So certainly this was not an ideal for his academic, social, and emotional growth. According to the Center for Education Recruitment, South Carolina is basically 40% down from previous years. And teachers are leaving the profession. As you all know, it's not just pay, but it's also the work environment conditions. Both Berkeley and Beaufort, as mentioned earlier, have already taken positive steps. And I think as the second largest school district in the state of South Carolina, we ought to follow suit and lead. Using ESSER funds and a small tax increase is practical. It's physically responsible approach to address the critical issue. And doing nothing at this point is no longer an option. As a small business owner, I will happily accept a 10 mil increase on my property taxes if I know it's going to help recruit and retain teachers. To be quite honest, I can't think of a better use of a tax increase than to reward our teachers. Once the compensation issue is addressed, please focus your efforts on improving teacher working conditions. A good start would be stop using distraction, but stop, let me start that again. A good start would be to stop being distracted by the political dog whistles and narratives to divide your constituents based on race or sexual orientation. Our job as elected officials is to represent all constituents, not just the loud minority or the ones who financially supported our campaign. Thank you for your time.
Good afternoon. I am Patricia Travis. I am a kindergarten teacher in the district and I love it. I've been teaching for over 20 years. I moved from a northern state where I would be making $18,000 more if I were still there. So today I am here to speak for the CCSD teachers who believe their voices will not be heard, and for the teachers who want to be here today, but they can't because they are working a second job. The task force has presented numerous options to increase teacher salaries. Thousands of signatures have been gathered and collected in support of raising the millage to help increase the teacher pay. The district and the board has stated they support increasing teacher pay. We certainly support it. However, there has been no action. Today, I ask for action and commitment. We ask that the board passes an operating budget for the upcoming school year that includes a $5,000 salary increase across all steps and a $5,000 bonus using the ESSER funds. We also ask for a commitment from the board that this is the beginning of the process to bring salaries up to the task force recommendations or beyond. Teachers are physically exhausted and financially stretched. 95% of the teachers I know have or are discussing leaving teaching. There's Facebook groups, transitioning teachers. Today, my colleague and I looked at each other when the previous speaker spoke about the remote positions. We're like, we need some action. We need an increase. We need you to help us make a difference. It would help retain veteran teachers, attract new teachers. It would show that the teachers are valued and respected as the professionals we are. The other districts' budgets are out. CCSD teachers still do not know, and we're starting to believe that there will be no action, only words. We go above and beyond daily for our students, and today we ask the board to go above and beyond daily for the teachers. Thank you for your time.
Good afternoon. I'm Stephanie Mignon. I've been an educator for over 30 years, the last 20 here in CCSD. I'm also the parent of 2 20-somethings who are educated from K through 12 in this district. And I want to express my appreciation for the hours and effort that you put into this job, truly. You may be asked by your constituents occasionally, why should we push for an increase for the old veterans like me who are way up there on the salary schedule? They're just going to retire eventually anyway, right? And, you know, they have the mortgages almost paid off and maybe a spouse who earns. What's the point? Well, when a new teacher comes on to your team, it's like having a newborn. You don't just take a fresh-faced 23-year-old, put him in a classroom and close the door. It just doesn't work. We're out there holding them up, unjamming the copy machine while they're sobbing in the workroom, taking over the bus duty because throwing them a lesson plan because they were at work till 11 the night before, right? Keeping them going. And this roiling of turnover that's been going on for the last couple of years. Yeah, we hella need to be paid for that. Plus, it needs to stop. We've got to get these new teachers in here to stay. And we're willing to help do that, but they've got to be able to afford to stay here. Thanks so much for everything you do.
And the final three, Catherine Nagel, Jared Hove, Carol Fry.
Hi, my name is Catherine Nagel. I'm a great grandmother of a student in the district. I'm here today to ask you to please reconsider your vote to enter into contract negotiations with Mr. Galian. Because he is the last man standing is hardly a stellar recommendation. I'm an active member of Moms for Liberty. As such, I had the opportunity to have a conversation with Mr. Galian at the meet and greet when he was here. And some of the things that he mentioned to me made me worried that he may not uphold the traditional values of Moms for Liberty, which group endorsed the board members here, at least 5 of the board members here. Also of concern, regardless of Mr. Galian's stance on policies, is it wise to hire someone with a recent history of significant ongoing health issues? Do we really want another potential temporary superintendent situation that would start this whole process all over again in the future? Thank you.
Thank you. Good afternoon. My name is Jared Hove. I'm a CCSD parent, CCSD spouse, and a member of the Charleston Area Justice Ministry. Summer is here, as we all know, and it's time to transition. For recent graduates, they're going into the next phase of work or education. For younger children, they're rising first graders, rising third graders, advancing in their education. For some, summer will mean a time of camp and enrichment and opportunity. For others, summer is a time of learning loss, in which students who are often already behind for many reasons often fall further behind. Which is why I'm glad we're looking at the reading data today in today's agenda. We've made an investment in the district in trying to increase reading attainment for all students in the district. One of the ways we can check whether that investment is bearing fruit is looking at the data. The data show us that we're on the right track, that our investments are in fact helping children who most need support in reading, receive it, and are able to succeed and thrive. So when we're looking at today, we're looking at the data. When we're looking at the investment we're making in teachers, I'd ask us to spend time thinking about enduring those investments that we know are working. This is a time of transition for our district. And so when we're looking at whether we're investing in teachers, regardless of their pronouns, regardless of their background, are we investing in the people who are going to make all of our students in Charleston County successful? And I hope that we take this as a first and important step in focusing on the right things and seeing that our investments of time, energy, and financial resources are bearing the fruit we all hope they are. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Carol Fry, and I'm a resident of West Ashley and a grandparent of CCSD students, one in high school, one in elementary school. And I'm also here, my wife, she's not going to speak, but she's a teacher. She comes from a long line of teachers and pastors in South Carolina. I come from a long line of poor farmers in South Carolina, but I know the value of an education because it helped me to move forward in a lot of ways. And I want to speak about two things this afternoon. First, I want to echo the thoughts of the lady that spoke before and say I am very disappointed in the process and the way it ended in the search for the new superintendent. I'm confident that the school board and the school system has rules against bullying. The reality is the search committee was bullied into a situation and you should not stand for it. Certainly, I know many people who believe it was not a good ending and it should not end the way that it is now. Also, I support the pay raise for teachers. 50 years ago, I started a job as an engineer and my wife was a teacher of combined 4th and 5th grade class. I came home after 9.5, 10 hours of work. She still had 3 or 4 more hours of work to do. Then I looked at her paycheck. Some things have changed in 50 years and some things have not. So I support the $5,000 that has been proposed for teachers. They deserve it. They're on the front line and we should honor them with the work that they're putting in to educate our young people. Thank you.
Thank you to everyone that has let us hear your voices and your concerns. For the online public comments, the summary is going to be 50 regarding compensation, 1 regarding EL curriculum, 7 regarding the superintendent search, 1 compensation and prayer, 1 compensation and EL, 2 about book removal, and 1 about the TIF. We do have copies of, each board member has a copy of the online public comments, and most of us read them all. And now we will move on to item 3A, the superintendent's report, and I will at this time turn it over to Mr. Kennedy and Ms. Denny.
Thank you very much, Ms. Motley. So we have a legislative update and to be introduced by Ms. Denny.
Thank you, Mr. Kennedy. I'd like to introduce today Amelia Wilkins, who's with us today from Campbell Consulting Group. Campbell Consulting Group represents CCSD in Columbia and keeps us abreast of legislative affairs.
Thank you so much, Ms. Denny. Thank you so much again, Superintendent Kennedy. Chair McKinney, members of the board, my name is Amelia Wilkes and I am the associate at the Campbell Consulting Group. Unfortunately, Daryl was not able to make it due to a prior commitment, so it'll just be me giving the update in front of you today. I want to begin with a little bit of an update from the last time we spoke earlier in May. So there was not a sine die resolution passed this year. However, the House and Senate did adjourn according to the Constitution on Thursday, May 11th at 5 p.m. The following day, May 12th, Governor Henry McMaster issued a proclamation to call back both the House and the Senate for a special session to take up a few special items, one being the budget. Also, Brian Gaines from the Department of Administration was appointed to serve as the Comptroller General. And then, of course, the House and Senate did pass a continuing resolution in the event that a budget is not passed by both chambers by July 1st. So what the continuing resolution will do if a budget is not passed is it will continue to fund state government and schools at the same levels as the fiscal 22-23 budget. Speaking of the budget, I will provide a budget update of where we are for fiscal year 23-24. So I believe what we said last time is that there are likely to be differences between the House and Senate version. And of course that was true. So that triggered a conference committee. The conference committee is made up of 6 members, 3 from the Senate and 3 from the House. So the Senate budget conferees include Senator Harvey Peeler, who is chairman of the Senate Finance Committee, Senator Thomas Alexander, who is Senate President, and Senator Nikki Setzler. The House budget conferees include Representative Bruce Bannister, who's chair of the House Ways and Means Committee, Representative Bill Herb-Kurtzman, who's a member of the committee, and Representative Todd Rutherford, who's also a member of the House Ways and Means Committee and House Minority Leader. So if you look at our timeline, we are at the conference committee phase. So that actually wrapped up last Thursday. The conference committee met a few times over the past few weeks, and they finally reached an agreement known as the conference report. So that conference report will be voted on by both the House and Senate chambers. They're expected to take that up this Wednesday when they're both back in session. Once both chambers have approved the budget, it will move on to the governor's desk, and vetoes are allowed in this time frame, but we will have to wait and see. Now that we're done with the budget update, I'll move on to legislation that has been approved by the governor. During this time, I'll only go over things that have been signed into law. I will not go through every slide for the sake of time, but I'm happy to answer any questions at the end. I will start with S39 Educational Scholarship Trust Fund. I spoke to you guys a little bit about this the last time I was here. This has now been signed by the governor. S39 will create education scholarship accounts, and this will funnel $6,000 to 5,000 students to cover either public or private education. In order for a student to qualify to receive this funding, they must be Medicaid eligible or be a sibling of a child who already receives the scholarship. If you guys remember, this was a really big priority for the General Assembly, and they outlined this as a priority at the beginning of session. Sunscreen at schools, S256. This bill states that public schools shall not prohibit the possession or personal use of sunscreen. So this bill was really key because it will eliminate the requirement of students having to have an individual health plan. So an IHP will no longer be needed for a student to use sunscreen at school. Workforce housing. This bill will allow municipalities and counties to use revenue generated by the local accommodations tax to use for the development of workforce housing. This bill will not increase taxes. However, it will just give counties and municipalities that flexibility to use any of that revenue to build workforce housing. Skipping ahead to the statewide Education and Workforce Development Act. So this was a priority outlined by Speaker of the House, Merle Smith. It's 3726. Back one more. While Maggie's bringing it up, I'll start talking about the bill a little bit. So this bill will create a unified, comprehensive statewide education and workforce development plan. So this bill is very extensive. It has a lot of moving parts, but there's two things I want to highlight. So one, the coordinating council that will be outlined in this bill, or that is outlined in this bill that will form, will include state superintendent of education and 3 appointments made at her discretion. So that will include a school district superintendent, a school counselor, and a career and technology and education director. Those will all be her appointees. Also to note that regional work advisors outlined in the bill will collaborate with local school districts and other local schools to make sure that guidance counselors and other personnel in the district are aware of any workforce opportunities, whether they require a college degree or not. It's just to ensure that when students complete their high school education, they are aware of any workforce opportunities. Paid family leave. This is a really big priority for the General Assembly this year, and this bill mimics what was passed last year for state employees. So any eligible school district employee will be granted 6 weeks of paid family leave in the event of a newborn child, and the secondary parent will be granted 2 weeks in the event of the birth of a newborn child. This bill will take effect on June 26th. There was a gap and a delay of taking it effect to ensure that districts have time to prepare to get this going. If the Department of Education has not sent out guidelines already, they will be sending out guidelines to guide school districts to build a policy around this piece of legislation. Last but not least, administration of life-saving medication in schools. This bill passed through the General Assembly fairly quickly, and it does outline that DHEC and the Department of Education will put together a comprehensive list of life-saving medications that either nurses or other personnel will be allowed to administer. So local school districts will be required to outline any other personnel other than school nurses who will be able to give or administer any life-saving medications to students, such as an EpiPen. So those are all the bills that have been signed into law during this session, but I want to make sure I answer any questions, whether it's about the budget process or any of the pieces of legislation so far.
I have a question. What specifically is the Campbell Consulting Group saying to legislators on behalf of CCSD that might help us budget-wise?
So we haven't said anything, but we will take guidance from the board, Superintendent Kennedy, and staff.
And also, Ms. McKinney, at the beginning of the legislative cycle, back in the winter, Mr. Campbell invited me to Columbia to the State House to meet with various representatives, which I did, and as well as the staff, Senate staff, so that they can understand what the concerns are here locally, here in Charleston, and I can have a better sense on how the approach that they are taking on the overall state budget. So that process takes place late fall, early winter.
I want to just continue right there, Mr. Kennedy, because that's what I was going to ask as well. And so you are our lobbyist in Columbia?
The firm is, Daryl Campbell is
the firm. Yes. And so you met with them in the fall. My concern is we are members of South Carolina School Board Association. And so the policy review that you just gave us, every day we receive policy updates and legislation updates from the School Board Association. So this really was the review. For me, the better use of a lobbyist in Columbia is on the budget side. I think it's unfair that the state gave everyone across the state the same $2,500. And I would have appreciated our lobbyists to lobby for more for Charleston because our cost of living is higher here. And so to give us $2,500 and give someone in McCormick County and more smaller counties the same thing, it's not fair. And so I would like someone to speak to, why didn't you lobby for that for us?
Mr. Kennedy, if I may, more to Ms. Roberson's point, we're a donor county. And therefore it would be, in my opinion, more in our interest to get more of our money back since we're a donor county.
I'll pass that on to Daryl.
Thank you.
Thank you, of course.
If you would like for me to respond, so we deal with the Education Funding Act of South Carolina. It goes way back into, I think, the 1980s or so, and as well as Act 388, which is 2007. And so there's a recognition in both of those state legislative acts that counties like Charleston that have the wherewithal wealth-wise in terms of property values would pay a bigger share of educating its kids versus a county that has a poor tax base. And so when I go to Columbia and talk with legislators about this, that's what they talk about. And so it's more of a statewide versus a local issue, especially around Act 388, which we're in a really tough position to statewide to be able to make changes. And when we say that the state has allocated evenly across all school districts, 70-something school districts in the state, an allocation of $2,500. That we, CCSD, did not receive $2,500. We received far less than $2,500 per teacher, but because of the state funding formulas, we are expected to make up the difference.
I'm going to call upon Mr. Calhoun.
Yes, I got
via Zoom.
Yes, yes, I have a question regarding S39. Do we know what the application process for S39 for the 5K yet? And then also, do we know how many students from Charleston County that will elect into that process?
No, so we do not know what the application process will look like per se. I will say that students must be Medicaid eligible or have, moving forward, if they have a sibling in the home that is already receiving the scholarship, they will become eligible, but proof of documentation will be provided. I do know that there is a startup line item in the budget as of right now. So we'll learn more, I'm assuming, when the startup process goes through. We will not know how many students from Charleston are expected to apply, but I'm sure we'll know more numbers. Once again, the startup fund has enacted and the application opens up for submission. We'll probably
Thank you.
know more after the first year when they increase the number to 10,000 students.
Okay, thank you. And Mr. Kennedy, is there anything we can do now to start trying to look at how many students? Well, I know we have the numbers of how many students are Medicaid eligible. We're not, but can we start looking at that and trying to make some type of analysis of what we think could happen to the district if it goes through the way that we think it's going to happen?
Certainly, we can begin exploring. It might be a little bit difficult without the lack of certain specifics, but we will begin that process.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Mr. Grabowski.
I just want to confirm the paid family leave. We're receiving no funding whatsoever from the state to initiate this.
Correct. As of right now, there's no extra funding in the budget to execute paid family leave.
Has there been any discussion at all by the lobbyist and to even discuss? I mean, I know other districts are talking about this.
Yeah, there's been a lot of discussion. I think it's going to be a wait and see until next year. But again, we can try to get you guys in touch with staff to further discuss if that's something you want to talk further about in terms of getting it included in the budget for future years.
Isn't that your job?
Well, yes, it is. But if you guys want to talk to them personally, 100%.
Thank you.
Of course.
Kennedy?
Yeah, also in regards to the process itself, the legislative process related to y'all's ability to have some voice or influence on the legislators. The way we do that in the fall, you guys are just coming on in the fall, we discuss what the legislative agenda should look like. What are the things that we want to have the state representatives consider? And then in the winter time, January, February, I think it was February this year, we invite all of our local legislative representatives, and we have a meeting here in this room so that the board can then express to them what their y'all's legislative priorities are. And then that is the entry point in trying to influence the entire state legislative body. And so I know this year is a little bit flawed because you guys were just coming on board as new board members. But as you get into the fall, this coming fall, then it would be very, very important for you as a body to understand and discuss what those priorities should be. And then in January, probably February, when the local legislative delegation is invited here, then you can have that level of engagement. And then that's when we then start engaging with our consultant, our lobbyists, to make sure that then they continue to carry that message.
Dr. Temple?
Well, that's good to hear because I'd like to see us get ahead of the process.
Would you mind
and
speaking
have
into your
more-
microphone? Thank you.
You can't hear me? Okay. That's good to hear. How the process goes, because I'd like us to get ahead of the process to really truly advocate for what we need in the district. I think that the state coming up with $2,500 for our teachers here in Charleston is just unacceptable. And there's a lot of other issues that go on at the lobbying stage that we need to be in front of and influence what's going on. So we have to be more progressive in what we're doing.
Does anyone have anything else? Okay.
Perfect. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, ma'am. We will move along now to item 5A, the Audit and Finance Committee report. With that, I'll turn it over to Mr. Grabowski. Yeah, yes, sorry about that. I sure did. For the Student Outcomes and Strategic Education Committee, spring 2023. Ms. Simmons, are you conducting that?
Ms. Roberts and I, but Mr. Kennedy, are you going to kick
Yeah,
us off?
I can kick it off. Yeah. So what the academic folks are going to present are the interim assessments for ELA or reading interim assessments for the spring. And what they will show that those assessments predict where our students how they will perform on the state assessments when they're released later this summer. Those assessments, that predictability is a high level of predictability. I think it's 85 to 90% or something like that. The focus on the presentation is going to be only on reading because that's the vision that we had 2027 of all kids reading on grade level. But I'll also say, although you won't see the data this evening, you will in the future. What you will see in terms of the results of the progress will also applies to math. It also applies to what we're seeing initially in our interim work around end of course exams at the high school, and also with a decrease in some of our schools, significantly so, of discipline. So if you take a look at acceleration schools, I think there's our school suspensions are down by 11 or 12%. In-school suspensions are down about 20%. And so couple that with some of the strategy, a lot of the strategies on the academic side, we're seeing tremendous progress. So with that, I'll turn it over to Michelle and Buffy.
Thank you so
Simmons,
much.
if I could just ask for a point of clarification, Mr. Kenny, can you clarify, how these tests that we just we're going to be talking about, and the difference of what the state has done? And, I understand there's an embargo and the whole process, but I don't think it's clear as to the tests that we're talking about and how they relate to the bigger picture.
Right, the team will cover that.
Okay, thank you.
Absolutely. Good afternoon, everyone. Today will be the first in a series of progress monitoring updates related to our student achievement results. We decided, as Mr. Kennedy alluded to focus exclusively on reading as our core indicator of student success. So what you can expect today is to hear about our interim assessments, namely MAP, Measures of Academic Progress, and iReady. So those are interim assessments that happen throughout the academic year. And it gives us a really strong indication of how well our scholars will perform on the end of year assessment, Mr. Grybowski, SE Ready, that's the state assessment. So, right, so this informs on a pretty regular basis for classroom teachers how to modify, how to differentiate instruction in a way that will help them be more successful on the state exam at the end of the year. So the big test, if you will, we'll have those indicators available to share publicly. It's usually in October when the state report cards are released. So Maggie, if you would, we'll begin here. So as a part of our progress monitoring toward Vision 2027 goals, assessing both growth and achievement indicators are critical for us. Notice on this representation how all grades, kindergarten through 5th grade, are positioned in the high growth, high achievement quadrant. This shows in a summary format the trajectory our kindergarten through 5th grade scholars are performing at. We're proud of this upward trend, demonstrating that our scholars are consistently improving each year there in CCSD. Of note, our 3rd through 5th graders are showing greater gains in both growth and achievement in reading. So we've spent significant time investigating and interrogating our practices so that we can have a laser-like focus on what's happening at the primary grades and how we can shore those up. But nevertheless, really excited that that entire cadre of grades are sitting at high achievement, high growth. So each year, students are assigned reading growth targets based on how well they do in the fall. Solid growth year after year is what we aspire for each scholar to achieve. Here on this slide, we show that our elementary grade students have made great progress and strides from spring of 2022 to spring of 2023 at an increase of 8.4 percentage points. Next.
Just out of a point of order, Mr. Kennedy, should we ask questions or wait till the end?
Ideally, if you could capture them and we could address them all at the end, that would be
Fair enough.
perfect. Next, on this slide, we capture the last 4 administrations of iReady reading growth results, which you notice and what we see are consistent increases in students meeting and exceeding their growth targets. That's a huge celebration for us. Along with measuring growth, we also use these interim assessments to measure the likelihood that scholars will meet proficiency on the state assessment at the end of the year, SE Ready. As depicted on this slide, the percentage of scholars projected to meet or exceed state standards this year stands at 54.5%. And as we alluded to a moment ago, based on early indications from embargoed SE Ready results, we believe that these improvements will hold true on our state assessment results, which again, I will reiterate, are expected to be released open and publicly in early October. On this slide, we show that all student groups have improved from last year to this year. While it's clear that there are still sizable gaps remaining between groups of students, we are invested and committed in closing the gaps with each successive year. But we thought it important to break this information out by demographic groups for you. To summarize this particular segment of our presentation before Ms. Roberts comes on, we wanted to highlight, lift up a few of the strategies we credit with making the impact on results that we just mentioned. First, we really want to emphasize a consistent ELA core curriculum. The majority, 41 of our elementary schools, participated, implemented and engaged in a consistent ELA core curriculum. That's huge for us. We haven't had that in a number of years. And for the last 2 years, we've had a core curriculum that has proven to be successful on many levels for us. The letters training that you allowed us to invest in for our schools, language essentials for teachers of reading and spelling has been a game changer that we think over time we'll continue to see the benefits from. And finally, I'm not going to read each one to you, but I wanted to lift up a few of the big ones that we contribute to the success we've seen for the last couple of years. Haggerty phonemic awareness training and all CD through second grade classrooms. When I talked about interrogating and investigating why our upper grade elementary students are faring better than the primary grades, we feel like there's work to do with the implementation of Haggerty phonics. So when you implement a new core curriculum and then we have supplemental materials to strengthen that, we believe we need to do a more thorough job monitoring, supporting, and ensuring that this work is happening across the board. But at this time, we want to do the same format for 6th through 8th, our middle grades, and Ms. Roberts will lead us through that information.
So we also use interim assessments to monitor progress in our middle grades. These assessments help us answer key questions like, are middle school students growing in reading? And are they meeting and exceeding their spring reading goals? Based on the data that we have, the answer is yes, they actually are. While we always have room to grow, a higher percentage or more of our middle school students are meeting and exceeding their growth targets. And they are growing at an expected or more than expected rate from last spring to this spring. We also see increases across our Black, Hispanic, and white student groups as well. While we know that more of our middle school students are growing and they're growing at an expected or average rate, are they growing enough to meet or exceed grade level expectations? Our data tells us, yes, they are. Projected proficiency to SC Ready shows every grade level increasing in achievement or performance from last spring to this spring. When looking at our student groups, we also see slight increases in achievement for our Black and white student groups. Overall, more students in their first year of middle school are performing on or above grade level, and more students are leaving middle school in grade 8 performing on or above grade level, indicating that we're making progress in both our elementary and our middle schools. While we do have much more work to do and are still in the process of evaluating programs and initiatives, we do believe that some key strategies implemented are working and are making a difference for our middle school students. For instance, providing a consistent core curriculum in 9 of our middle schools has been impactful in how we increase capacity throughout our system. We've strengthened teaching and learning with aligned assessments, curriculum maps, pacing guides, and professional development with ongoing coaching support. Through our PLC cohort and our learning walks, we've learned lessons and we've gained valuable insight in how we deliver instruction and how we use relevant data to make decisions about reteaching and enrichment. This has also helped us to ensure high expectations, rigorous standards of learning, and relevant professional learning opportunities for our students. With an intentional and targeted focus on critical thinking, reading, and writing, our students are learning to decode text structures, understand content knowledge, analyze and synthesize multi and varied sources, and provide evidence to support arguments both orally and in writing. They're doing this through our DBQ process and also our text-dependent analysis. We will sustain progress through the continuation of the practices that we've discussed and progress even farther by solidifying our instructional framework, scaling out professional community structures, and collaborating within our student data review process to ensure that we stay focused on the key priorities and leverage strategies that will have the highest impact on student success. This concludes our presentation. We're happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you. I'm going to start with Dr. Temple. Dr. Temple, do you have any questions?
Well, there are a couple of questions. I'm glad to see the growth that's occurring. I guess I'm still concerned that we think of, 49, 22, 23, 49, 50% of our students in middle school are meeting or exceeding. That means 50% are not.
Absolutely.
So that is, concerning in terms of then looking at the middle schools, the 99 of the middle schools implementing a core, curriculum. The other observation or question I have with the elementary school, while there's 41 schools with a consistent core curriculum, I still question how do we look at the data for those teachers who are following the core curriculum versus those who tell me they just slam the door and do their own thing. So, at some point I'd like to see, the impact of that and the difference. So, I commend the growth that we're seeing. That's great because I know we haven't been working very long. So the growth is really good. But I think, in all honesty, we still have a ways to go.
Absolutely. We do not disagree with you. But we understand that we have to look at growth as an indication of our progress towards proficiency. So what we've learned over time is if we position scholars to achieve their growth targets year after year, that gets them closer and closer to proficiency. It sounds cliche to say it doesn't happen overnight, but that's how we make progress. And so we don't like to discredit one over the other. We feel like both growth and achievement indicators both tell us a story. And so we feel confident that if we are able to continue to grow at the rate we are currently, we'll be able to close these gaps that exist.
And Ms. Simmons, if I
Miss Anita Huggins. Sorry, we can't hear you.
can you hear me now?
Yes, ma'am.
Dr. Temple, thank you for that question. If I might just interject and add to what Ms. Simmons said, based on what we know about student proficiency with the projections we've reviewed for SC Ready, it appears that our students will outperform even what our formative assessments projected that they will perform based on state results. And we're seeing this on summative results. We're seeing this all the way through middle school. And even as we look into our EOCs in high schools, we're very optimistic in all four areas that students we're really beginning to see the result of this focus on specific goals and student outcomes at the elementary and middle school, even our high schools. I think Dr. Epplesheimer is in the room and she's taken a look at some of those scores. So like Michelle said, we're certainly not satisfied at all with where students are, the gap that still exists between students of color and their white peers, but we are beginning to make progress. And you're spot on in regards to the implementation of a core curriculum and how we monitor that. And we're working with our principals and our teachers to ensure implementation with integrity that supports where students are, where families are, and what teachers know students need in the classroom.
Just want to follow up a little bit more in that, recognizing that this is standardized testing. But I have a hunch that not every kid is doing real well on these tests, that probably there's some authentic, real performance tasks and pieces that would show growth and show really the outstanding work that some students are doing who their growth may not be reflected in this test, is what I'm saying.
Spot on.
Ms. Roberson?
No, I think the only thing I have to say is that I guess I'll accept the small gains because with no gains, we're not doing anything. So even though it's still 60%, that's still not on grade level, we are seeing gains. And I'm encouraged that by October, when we look at the true scores, that we will see more gains. And also, I'm looking at the dates, and this is what the first straight year since COVID that these results are, that we're looking at these projections. So that could probably have something to do with it as well. But thank you, and I'm encouraged. Thank you.
Mr. Calhoun?
I have no questions, but I will say I'll just reiterate everything that they just said. This is what happens when we actually invest within our education system and invest inside the professional development for our teachers and the staff, so we can actually start making some of these great gains. So we have a long way to go, but this is a good start.
And Ms. McKinney?
Yes.
So agree, a little bit of progress is good. My question is what is the difference and how accurate is the projected score that you had on the first couple of slides versus what actually happens later. Do we go up, do we go down, or is it a pretty good projection?
While this is the first year that we've actually used iReady as a part of our projections, I can tell you historically, we tend to do better on the actual SE Ready assessment. I can't give you too many details because the data is embargoed, but we are very optimistic, very optimistic.
And Mrs. McKinney, if I may, Mrs. Roberts, certainly correct me if I'm wrong, because I'm no data expert like you, but I believe that these formative assessments have greater than 85% predictability. So particularly in the case of math, we are fairly novice in using iReady in all of our schools. Our acceleration schools have used them iReady longer, but there is a high correlation of success. And what we know to be true based on looking at the proficiency, because of some of the preliminary results that I will echo are indeed embargoed. We're really excited about our fall outcomes with the knowledge, as Mrs. Roberson and Dr. Temple stated, that we still have a long way to go.
You are right, Ms. Huggins. It's anywhere from 82 to 86, depending on the grade level. So you're exactly right. Spot on.
Well, I'm no math person, but I think I took an average, maybe.
That's
Maybe
really
that's
good.
close.
Mr. Grabowski, you had a question?
Thank you. I'm very pleased, and I think this is to see green arrows going up no matter what the percentage is. And I think this is highly reflective on our teachers and why we need to pay them more, because this has been a very turbulent year, this year, last year, and definitely with the curriculum. I'm a little concerned with, and I agree with you, I think we need a core curriculum. I think and I'm very happy to see the Haggerty phonics. I think we're going to see some really great results in the years coming up. But how are you going to address going into the fall, considering that, EL material hasn't, we can't use it. And so are we going to be now starting this process where we really bring in the teachers and we really bring in the parents and work for trying to find a core? I'm just curious as to how we're going to address this issue.
Listen, if you don't mind, I'm happy to take a shot at that.
Fair question though, but go ahead, Anita, and if I need to tag on, I will.
So, Mr. Grabowski, it's a great question. As we've received some preliminary information from the State Department that our current core curricula may not be on the state textbook adoption preference list as we go into the next year. Next year will be a year for all districts in South Carolina to adopt a core ELA curricula, something the state hadn't done in a whole lot of years. And so we'll be working with appropriate stakeholders in a very defined type process to adopt an ELA curriculum. But over the course of the next year, we'll be looking to the board for guidance and direction on how we use the next year with the core curricula that we have to make sure kids continue learning. We're working now with a stakeholder group that is developing teacher modules at every level for students and for teachers, and teachers are part of that process. We have district leaders who are part of that process so that we don't lose momentum as the state and districts across the state work collaboratively to adopt curriculums.
Because it was my understanding, it's just the EL material. It's not the curriculum. There's no real, it's just the material that is not approved by the state.
Here's the thing, if I may.
Sure.
So while it's true and accurate that the state has removed EL from the Palmetto Literacy Project Schools approved list, that does not prevent a board of trustees from moving forward with whatever curriculum they would like. So as Ms. Huggins alluded to, for this upcoming year, we will be looking to the board to make a solid decision for schools moving forward in terms of, okay, the new school year is a couple of months out. Our scholars, our teachers deserve the benefit of having a curriculum to move forward with. So my intention, our intention is to ask for your support with continuing with the progress that we just outlined a few moments ago by securing the materials, the resources, and the development that our folks at the schoolhouse deserve for the upcoming school year.
Great answer. As to the data, I just want to understand, I mean, because are we still using MAP in the upper grades?
That's correct. So at the middle grades, in the middle schools, they're still utilizing MAP.
Right. So, and the big difference between MAP and SC Ready is basically set on the standards, the state standards, whereas MAP is a little different, more of, I mean, in other words, when you take a MAP test, that's the first time you ever see those type of questions versus an SC Ready, you're actually working with it throughout the year.
Both, I think probably it might be easier to explain this by talking about iReady and also MAP together. But both of those assessments actually are great predictors on how students will perform on the SE Ready assessment. Those stems, like you're saying, like types of questions may look different than what you would see on an SE Ready assessment, but that's also the case with iReady as well.
Yeah, because I'm just trying to figure out, that's why I asked, you know, what's the big test scores from the state? They're basically SE Ready. And I mean, does MAP figure into that too?
Oh, no, sir. I'm sorry. I misunderstood your question. No, SE Ready is the summative assessment. These assessments like iReady and MAP are just supposed to be utilized for instructional purposes. So they aren't considered to be summative, but they are great predictors.
Thank you very much.
Yes,
like
sir.
I said, I'm very proud of our teachers because this was a, you know, tough 2 years and they did a wonderful job to have increases across the board.
The victory is in the classroom.
staff.
We don't take credit at the central office. All of the good work happens at the schoolhouse. But I do want to give someone credit, not to call anyone out, but Dr. Davis and his team has been working very hard to stay ahead of this. So thank you, Dr. Davis.
Well, and if I may, Ms. Roberson, I appreciate that. Mr. Grabowski, your comments too. You know, if I may, we're seeing formative assessment results with MAP and iReady higher than pre-COVID. So that is a significant accomplishment in this year. Our student growth rates right now rival and exceed that of pre-COVID. So that is significant. And I'll echo what Mrs. Roberson said a moment ago, and that of Mrs. Simmons. It simply would not be possible without the commitment of 3,500 teachers across our system, elementary, middle and high, and pre-K, who work tirelessly to learn new curricula, to implement new curricula while balancing the demands of everything else they have to do as educators. And so when we talk about teacher pay, as Ms. Simmons stated, victory is in the classroom, and that's where what we value most. But those teachers couldn't do what they do without the great support of principals. Dr. Gathers being one who's in the audience. Ms. Condon, I think I heard her speak earlier. Principals have provided the structure. They've blocked for teachers to do great things in schools, and so they're owed a whole lot of acknowledgement and respect for these gains that we're seeing with students. And lastly, you know, Dawn and I and you as the board have the pleasure and the blessing to work alongside a talented group of people who are represented in that room. 4 associate superintendents who are stellar: Joe Williams, Sherry Eppelsheimer, Jen Swearingen, and Jackie Haynes. A CAO who is fantastic, Michelle, Dr. Davis, LaShawna Rivers and her team, who have really stood in the gap to make sure that folks have the support they need at the school level to do what's right for kids. And so, again, we're seeing some exciting things in our schools, and we appreciate the support of the board to continue those things as we look forward to a brand new year.
And then I want to apologize to Mr. Kelly, who's sitting online. Did you have anything?
I think he's muted.
Ed, did you have anything? If you're speaking, you're muted. Unless I accidentally got away from the. Miss Huggins, I guess if we're waiting on Mr. Kelly, Miss Huggins, I want to go back to what you were saying with Mr. Grabowski's question in terms of what this on the state level, what they are planning on doing for next year in terms of a standardized a curriculum adoption for ELA. Can you speak to that, or is that something that we can take into a conversation at our next Cal meeting?
I think Mrs. Watley, we certainly can engage in a conversation with you as the board. We need to do some education around with you all. I know Dr. Temple's very familiar, given her background, maybe Mrs. Roberson, maybe Mrs. McKinney, but we need to lay out for you the process of the state textbook adoption, which is what this is, not a curricula adoption, but a textbook adoption, and how the state frames that. The state will give us a list of 3 to 4 curricula, and we'll vet it appropriately across our system. For example, we'll get feedback from parents and all kind of folk about what textbook is most appropriate to move forward with our students. But we can look at that and go into more depth with you all about that, because we're going to need some resources to continue into the new year. And if you don't know what's coming from the state, you won't necessarily know how to make decisions about how to best support us in school. So we certainly are willing to engage in a conversation with you all about that if you all are open to that.
Yes, ma'am. I think that would be a good idea. Mr. Kelly, are you?
I apologize, Ms. Watley. Yes, I have no questions. Thank you, though.
Alrighty, thank you. And
Could I ask one more question?
go ahead, Dr. Temple.
I just wanted to ask, with the ELA adoption, is the state at the point now where they have identified the textbooks already, or are they in the process of having the teacher teams identify books?
You know what, Dr. Temple, I think Dr. Davis is in the audience there, Miss Simmons. We're talking about this, but I don't think there's anything quite official just yet. Although I think the state has made some preliminary decisions about what textbook series may be on that list. Districts hadn't officially been notified. So this may be news to some folks, unless there's been some advancements or some recent developments that I might not be aware of. Michelle, are you, Jerome, able to speak to that if I made a mistake?
Yes. So the state has initiated task force for K2, 3, 5, 6, 8, and 9, 12. The good news is we have a CCSD representative on all of the groups except the 3, 5. I know that the K2 group has already started receiving materials to preview, to unpack, and to analyze. And so the process starts in earnest this summer, and the balance of the school year will be about vetting and learning about the choices so that we can find one that suits our needs in terms of making sure our scholars have high quality instructional materials, as they have for the last couple of years. So the process is underway, Dr. Temple.
Ms. Roberson, did you have anything else? Ms. McKinney? Mr. Grabowski, okay. Mr. Calhoun, did you have anything else?
Thank you.
Okay. All right, with that, we will now move on to audit and finance. Items 5A, Mr. Grabowski, I'm gonna.
we had a very long and wonderful working audit and finance meeting, committee meeting. A lot of it was on working as fast with staff on trying to get a budget proposal, which we'll talk a little further about as I go through it. We will have some matters in executive session, which I will ask the board to consider, dealing with the TIF. And just so the public knows, this is part of the process that, the district's involved when a TIF is presented. So a lot of these are procedural steps that the board has to do, and then they're contractual matters. We have some really, and it'll be stimulating to hear the presentations on the refunding of the installment purchase revenue bonds. I would also ask the board to review the facility use and rental guide, which will be coming up. A lot of these are other items that we normally go through, the capital programs, phase 4 and phase 5. The fixed cost of ownership budget reallocation, once again, that's pretty standardized, and all these documents are on board docs, for review. And I would ask the board just to review them. The Laura Brown fund request is kind of an interesting situation. We used all the funds, and I think it's one of the first times we've ever done it. So that will be a very good, positive report to hear from the staff. Committee memberships, I'm happy to state that we've somehow coerced people that have been on the committee for a while not to lose any of their wonderful wealth of knowledge, and they've all re-upped. So I think that's a positive sign for staff and everybody that shows that it's working. And approval of projects over 250,000. I mean, I know we've all had questions being addressed to staff, and staff's been addressing them. So we will take that up, at the board meeting. What I would like to do now for the F-24 continuing resolution, first reading of the FY24 budget, and a lot of this will address the concerns that were raised by the teachers, by staff, so we can start showing, some of the attentions that the committee really is promoting and is hoping that we can work with the board over the next, couple of weeks. And I would like Mr. Kennedy and Ms. Carlin to give a presentation as to what the staff and how it works through the committee request, and we can get this process moving. And then by the time we get to the board meeting in the next couple of weeks, we will have something that is really, we will be able to push on to public, opinion and get this wrapped up as quickly as possible. So, Mr. Kennedy.
Thank you. Now I'll go ahead and turn it over to Ms. Carlin.
Thank you. So today we'll be presenting a revised first reading of the FY24 budget. I'll be presenting a scenario with a 7.1 mil increase, as well as a 9.8 mil increase. Both of the scenarios for teachers include a step plus a $5,000 teacher salary increase out to step 40, as well as a 2.5% cost of living adjustment for non-teachers out to step 31. There'll be another, if you take a look at the PowerPoint on the far right side, there's another scenario that's just for informational purposes, that does not include a millage increase, but includes all of the mandatory items that we have to cover in the upcoming budget.
And Ms. Carlin, if I could just step in on that.
Yes,
this
sir.
is something that I asked them to do. They do not like ever to produce a budget that is not balanced. So I really requested that this be done because I really need to stress the importance of what we need to be doing as a board, because this one that is being proposed for information purposes shows you the dangers of doing nothing and what we're being required to do from the state and just meeting the bare minimum of the $2,500. So it's purely just for informational purposes. And I truly appreciate Mr. Kennedy and Ms. Carlin for putting that in the package.
And real quick, while Ms. Carlin presents, can somebody check the minutes from the audit and finance? I thought we said the scenario 27 will be the recommended scenario that we will move forward with to the CAL.
Yes, sir. There was some confusion on my part with that. The first block that I have recommended, that was our staff recommendation that we've been recommending all this time. So I apologize that I did not reference that the second second scenario, scenario 27, was actually a recommendation for the Audit and Finance Committee. I was going to
Thanks.
clarify that in my talking points.
Oh, I appreciate that. I'm sorry, I don't think that.
No, sir, thank you. So I'll move forward with the first scenario, which I know several of you have seen on many occasions. Both the scenario 22 and the scenario 27 include the Senate version. Up until we get some new information from the state, we'll continue to report this revenue increase this way. So scenario 22 with a 7.1 mil increase. So funds available for allocation are $42.2 million. The next section talks about our required increases. These are increases that we have to factor in regardless of which millage increase we go with. For example, we have to do a teacher step regardless of which teacher salary increase the board votes on. But this particular scenario includes the $5,000 increase plus the step, the retirement increase, health and dental increase, as well as the mandated paid parental leave. That line item covers what we projected for substitute costs. And then charter schools and Meeting Street increases, as well as the contractual obligations and must do on the operations side. So the total required increases right off the bat are approximately $51.4 million. I'd like to point out, I know the state has recommended a $2,500 salary increase, but we factored both of these scenarios in with a $5,000 teacher salary increase across the board. The next section is the school data review recommendations. We met with several principals during the spring, and these were the recommendations that came out of many of those meetings, from teacher planning, professional development time, math coach interventionist, additional assistant principal needs for elementary schools, sustaining Title I positions, and then the increase in data clerks pay as well as contractual number of days. And the total for school data review recommendations is $6.8 million. The next line item is learning services expansions. And that total is $2.2 million. And that includes, although I don't have it in this particular PowerPoint, that includes increases in multilingual services, additional school supports on the truancy level, as well as additional support with child development and translation services. And that total, as I said earlier, is approximately $2.1 million. And then the next slide item is our net position gains due to enrollment changes. And this is just what we have projected for the upcoming year based upon projected enrollment, which is approximately $4 million. The next section is other considerations. This is where we factor in the non-teacher 2.5% cost of living adjustment, as well as the non-teacher step increase that's going out to 31 years, as well as we are seeing some increases in our insurance premiums, and then our our outsourced legal fees. So the total other considerations is $10 million. So overall, when we take into consideration the FY24 expenditure requests that we just went through, and then the projected additional funds needed, we have a remaining need to balance at $32.1 million. So if you look in the highlighted items below where it talks about strategies to balance, we have factored in several different ways to balance this budget. We already took care of a mid-year spending freeze back in April that was approximately $2.7 million. We've looked at eliminating departmental positions at the central office staff level, which is approximately $8.4 million. And then we have also looked at and reduced non-salary budgets at approximately $7.5 million for FY24. Potential local revenue increase, we're projecting could come in at 3.5. And what that means is we're currently using spring assessments, and we'll get some more updated assessments from the treasurer's office or the auditor's office in late August, early September. So we'll be able, normally the difference between those two assessments brings in an additional $3.5 million. And then we're projecting a use of fund balance for additional FY23 savings around $5.3 million. That number is coming from our financial updates where we've been showing that we're not spending money as quickly or as much as we thought we were. And that number at this point is about $5.3 million. And then on top of that, money that we were just going to pull from fund balance was 4.7 million. So total strategies to balance is approximately 32 million. And with that, this scenario 22 is a balanced budget. So going over to scenario 27, with the 9.8 mil increase, it does give us a little bit more local revenues. So instead of working with about $42 million in revenues, we'll be able to work with about 51 million. The required increases are the same as the prior scenario, as well as the school data review recommendations, as well as the learning services expansions, as well as the net positions, and as well as the other considerations. The only thing that we changed on this particular scenario, along with the millage increase, is under our strategies to balance, we removed the line item for elimination of departmental positions at the central office locations. But all in all, we were able to balance this budget by using $23.7 million in strategies to balance.
Hey, Miss Jackie, can I ask you a question, please?
Yes.
I think I asked you this a month or two ago, that 8.5 or so on the departmental positions, how many people does that represent? And what positions are those that are, I don't know how to say this respectfully, that could be that you've decided could be removed?
I don't know right off the top of my head. It's somewhere between 35 and I believe 50.
Mr. Kelly, it's about 35 positions, which includes vacancies. It is an item that we were going to cover on today's agenda as well.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Bergman. And I just wanted to make sure that wasn't done in a vacuum, and Mr. Kennedy, I presumably was able to review those positions and give the thumbs up that theoretically we could do without them.
Yeah, yes, sir. Each department head weighed in on positions by their division.
Outstanding. Thank you all for all the work in this. It's a lot. Sorry to interrupt, Miss Jackie.
Mr. Kelly, also, I don't know if you were aware, but there should be a document for you in board docs.
Outstanding. Thank you very much.
And so the next column over is just for informational purposes to show you or to show everyone that if we don't do a millage increase, what that looks like at our bottom line. Because regardless, there are certain required increases or expenditures that we have to cover, which are teacher salary increases and retirement increases, health insurance, things like that. And so if we did not do a millage increase, even if we tried to use the confirmed strategies to balance that we know we can do, which is the mid-year spending freeze, which already took place, as well as use of fund, use of fund balance, we would still be short about $22.2 million on this particular budget. And so going to the next slide. So basically, I want to talk about the items that are highlighted in yellow, because this is where we have to be very conscientious about how we handle our fund balance and making sure that we're following our own fund balance policy. So if you notice on the projected fund balance as of June 30, 2024, we are in line with what we should be falling in line with our fund balance policy for both of the scenarios. So if you go to the second highlighted yellow item where it says 144.4 million, that's where we need to be based upon what we're looking at for this year's expenditures and how the fund balance policy works. Same with scenario 27, we're in line with our own fund balance policy. However, on the third row, the third column over under informational purposes, if we did not do anything, Bill. If we did not do anything, we would have to use approximately $129 million in fund balance, and this would go below our fund balance policy threshold. And that can create some problems for us with long-term debt, Moody's ratings, things like that. Okay, next slide, please. And so I know several of you have seen this slide before, but this is just a reminder of the teacher salary increase examples with a $5,000 flat increase across all of the cells on the teacher salary schedule. And I'll just go through a few of them. For example, a brand new teacher straight out of college, step 0. Right now that salary would be $43,146, but a new teacher coming on in FY24, it would actually be, I'm sorry, I said that completely wrong. Right now, a teacher at a bachelor's step 0 going to a step 1. Right now, her salary would be $43,146. With the step increase plus the scheduled $5,000 that we're projecting, this individual would actually see a $5,900 salary increase. So the new salary would be $49,074. Same with the next block of data, the masters. Going from a step 5 to a 6, the FY23 salary is $53,391. When you combine the step and the $5,000 increase, it's about a $6,000 increase. So the salary would be $59,440. I'll go to the doctorate step 5, going from a step 35 to a step 36. The FY23 salary is $101,430. And with the $1,400 step increase, as well as the $5,000 scheduled increase, the overall increase would be approximately $6,400, and their new salary would be $107,843. Next slide, please. So our proposed millage rates, we have factored in 2 different rate increases in this particular, in both of these scenarios. The value of a mill on the operating side is approximately $3 million. With the proposed increase of a 7.1 mil, the millage rate would go from 130 to 137.1. So the total increase in dollars would be approximately $21.3 million. However, we're also recommending on the debt service side, the value of a mill on that side is approximately $5 million. And we are recommending that we decrease this millage rate from 28 to 26. So there would be a decrease in dollars of $10 million to help offset this. And so the net impact to taxpayers would be around $11.3 million. So when you look at the next area down where we're proposed increase of 9.8, we're looking at an increase in dollars of approximately 29.4, but then offsetting that with a 2 mil decrease on the debt side. So the net impact to taxpayers would go to 19.4 million.
Ms. Carlin, do you mind explaining the difference in those two again?
Mm-hmm. Yes. Okay. So if the board recommends a 7.1 mil increase, along with the 2 mil decrease on the debt service side, the net impact to taxpayers would be $11.3 million.
What I meant was the difference in the operating millage versus the debt service millage.
Oh, yes, ma'am. So on the operating millage can be used to actually support the operations of the school district, whether it's teacher increases, classroom instruction, supplies, things like that. We can use operating millage to support that. However, we cannot use that on the debt service millage. That can only be used for short-term and long-term debt and debt only. We can't transfer any of that into general operating fund to be used to do any type of operations of the school district. Does that make sense?
It does. I don't think that I'm still getting the what I really want to know. I just remember one of the workshops that you all did for us, and you had you guys over here, and then you had the one gentleman who was let me get more information to better ask my question for you.
Okay.
In other words, proceed. Just I'll come back to you later with it.
Okay, that's fine. And so either of these recommendations will reduce the debt service portion of tax bills for every single taxpayer in Charleston County. And in the next few slides, we'll provide examples of the impact of taxpayers for the proposed millage changes. Okay, so the first one. So this is for an owner occupied with an assessed home value of $435,000. So whether we do a 7.1 mil increase or a 9.8 mil increase, it will not impact this particular type scenario. Because as you know, owner occupied homes do not pay taxes on the operating millage. However, they will see a reduction in their tax bill for the debt service side because we would still do the 2 mil decrease if that's what the board votes to do. So they will see a change in their taxes of a negative $35. Next slide, please. So on non-owner occupied homes, these are rentals and second homes, things of that nature, with an assessed home value of $435,000. So with a 7 mil increase, with the 2 mil decrease on the debt side, this particular tax bill would see an increase of approximately $133. With the 9.8 mil increase and the 2 mil decrease on the debt service side, this particular homeowner would see an increase of $203.
Ms. Carlin, while you're on this slide, and I'm sorry to stop you again.
Okay.
I have some constituents who are landowners that have apartment complexes, to be specific, I've had some reach out to me who have low income apartments and I have many of them. And I don't see any figures how that's going to impact apartment complexes, the landowners and those that own those, which we know those owners are going to then transfer the cost that impact to them over to their renters. And so that's going to equate into a rent increase. Would you mind getting some figures for us on that so that I can then speak to my constituents?
And I will also confirm with our auditor's office if that would fall under this category, or would it be something different, like maybe a fee in lieu or something like that?
Wonderful, because there's definitely concern in my district. I can't speak for anyone else's, but my district has a lot of apartments in it.
Okay.
Ms. Watley, may I add to that?
Sure.
I mentioned this last week as well, but the teacher task force presented to this board and said that a majority of their teachers cannot buy homes because of the pay rate. Now, I'm making an assumption here that our teachers are not homeless, which means that they are renters. And so these second homes where a lot of folks, now granted there are summer homes, but a lot of folks are renting them, those are very likely being rented to, among many others, teachers. So what we are doing with this, with this proposal is we are increasing the rent of teachers, both whether it be an apartment complex or homeowners or home rentals. Raising tax on commercial property trickles down, as you said, Ms. Watley, and it is not a good way to balance a budget. It just seems very, I'd like to see numbers that show maybe even the makeup of our teaching staff, how many own home versus rent, or rent single family versus multifamily. I would venture to guess this would hurt teachers more than it would help.
Okay. I made a note of that, Mr. Kelly.
Thank you very much, Ms. Jackie.
So Jackie, the changes in taxes paid, this is on an annual basis, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Oh, I know it's correct.
Yes, sir. That's
So-
a good point.
So, and I'm not sure on the next slide here where we have the commercial real property, whether that's where the
Apartments are.
departments
Yeah.
are actually located in this scenario. I think it may be, so you can verify that. But I would say though, if a teacher is going to receive an additional $5,000 per year in salaries, and if it's under the slides you just covered, but understand it right, it'd be a total increase of $185 annually under the non-owner occupied.
For the 7.1 mil increase, it'd be approximately $133.
Okay,
I see what you're saying.
I missed, yeah. Well, I missed the net.
Side,
Well,
yes.
if there's going to be cost increase is going to be passed on to the renter, then, I mean, one assumption I guess could be made that the cost decrease on the debt service would potentially be, that would be passed on also. But anyway, so that net 133 for the 7.1 or the 164 for the 8.3 mil or the $203 for the 9.8 mil was on an annual basis would be significantly less than the $5,000
Yes, sir.
salary increase.
Sir.
Well, and Mr. Kennedy, that would certainly be accurate if the numbers that we were using were representative of actual costs in Charleston County. But I don't see it on the particular slide in front of it. But if my memory serves, I think this was, and Miss Jackie could answer the question. The average cost to the homeowner was used. What was that? It was $320,000 or something like that on the cost of the home that we were doing this calculation on.
We base it on assessed home values because that's how the county auditor's office bases it.
So the numbers that are being used here for home value, assessed home values of 435,000. So that's not market value. That's what the assessed value for tax purposes, which is always significantly less than the market value.
But absolutely, I'm grateful for that. Grateful for that truth, isn't for sure. But the point is, 435 is relatively low for at least a lot of areas and a lot of constituents in my area in District 2. So I do hear your point. You're not wrong, but that's assuming that the average is true for everyone, which it of course is not.
So when I reached out to the auditor's office, I believe it was last budget season, we wanted to make sure we were using accurate assessed home values, like an average in the area. And these are actually the numbers that they recommended that we use for these scenarios. So, but I do see your point, sir.
I just want to caution, we're throwing numbers out here like it's only 400 and something dollars extra a year. The world that we live in, especially for younger people, it's increasingly harder and harder to live, to buy groceries, to pay gas. So it's not only a $400 increase every year. You're adding that on top of and on top of and on top of. And a lot of people are really feeling a lot of pressure financially right now. So let's not casually, and I don't mean to sound rude, but let's not casually throw these numbers around because it's something that's pressing on a lot of people's minds.
I'm just making a presentation.
Yes,
I
ma'am.
didn't mean to come across that way at all.
I didn't think that you did. I just wanted to, throw that out there.
Okay. May I continue?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you. So moving on to commercial real property, a 7.1 mil increase with a 2.0 mil decrease would be approximately $513 as far as an impact to taxpayer. And for a 9.8 mil increase with a 2.0 mil decrease, it would be $784 would be the impact to the taxpayer. And then going on to the next slide with the automobile, for an assessed value of $20,000, it would be additional $6 for the 7.1 mil increase with the 2 mil decrease. And it would be $9.36 for a 9.8 mil increase and a potential 2 mil decrease. And then next slide. For the personal property with a $10,000 assessed value, to do the 7.1 mil increase with the 2.0 mil decrease, the impact to taxpayer would be $5.36. And for the 9.8 versus the 2.0 mil decrease, the impact to taxpayer would be $8.19. Next slide, please. And so recommended next steps based upon what I've heard in our board meetings, as well as our audit and finance committee meetings. And this is just a recommendation with next steps looking forward. June 26th, I imagine we'll have our first reading of the actual FY24 budget presentation. July 6th, we would have an audit and finance committee meeting and have them vote on the second reading of the budget. July 8th. This is important because I have to post the public hearing ad 15 days in advance, whether it's in the paper and or on social media. And then if we need to do a special called board meeting the week of July 10th to work through any more budget updates, I just put that in there if it was needed. Not that I'm trying to create another meeting for y'all. And then if we were, on board with trying to get a final reading past July 24th, we could do the public hearing and then the second reading of the budget presentation and the board adoption. I don't know if that's where we're headed, but I just wanted to list those dates out. I believe Mr. Kelly wanted to see something like that.
Thank you very much, Miss Jackie.
You're welcome. And unless there's no other questions, that concludes this presentation.
Thank you.
There was one other thing that was brought up in the committee. And if you look at last year's second reading, which is the big book, and it's very difficult for staff to get this done. And hopefully next year, when we go into the fiscal year, when we start the budget process, we'll be talking about a lot of these issues in in October, November, December. But what I've asked staff to do is much similar to the way that they have laid out the Education Improvement Act funds, is to add a section to this book that definitely lays out the impact of ESSER 3. And the reason is if you look at the duty of the Audit and Finance Committee is to review significant accounting and reporting issues, including complex, unusual transactions, highly judgmental areas, and recent professional and regulatory pronouncements, and understand their impact on the financial statements. And ESSER 3 this year is going to have a huge impact on us. When you look at it, we're talking over $163 million, and there are an awful lot of FTEs, consultants funded by ESSER 3 act on the future and future budgets. So I've asked them just to lay it out so that we can look at it, so that we're all, the public is fully aware. I know staff is fully aware, and they are working very hard to tackle this issue, but it is huge. I think the vendors should be listed, their names, their scope of work, the cost, accountability. All this needs to be public and transparency brought out, and to use funding for the next part of our discussion when we talk about the ESSER budget. I'll hold off on that just to show you the process that we're going to be recommending to the board. You want to move there?
I'm sorry, did you ask me a question?
Well, that's all I have to say about this budget presentation.
Okay, so that concludes.
I have one more item on the audit and finance.
Okay.
And that was the use of ESSER funds for the bonus. We will be coming to the board, and that's going to be a process. We're going to have to work really hard with staff on this, because staff will identify how the funds were allocated to the state for a plan, but that doesn't mean we can't find funds in what has been allocated. It's not going to happen overnight, but it's going to take a lot of work from staff to identify funds that weren't spent, funds that may have been, taken back, and I'll let staff do that. But then we will be coming to the board asking permission to give staff that right to do it, so that we may be able to allocate it, later on in the year as bonuses to teachers.
Did anyone have anything else?
Just one question for Mr. Kennedy. And was there a millage increase last year?
There was, I think it was it 6.3? Is that right? Yeah.
Year before?
My memory doesn't go back that far. I'm sorry.
I guess just not that, I'm not necessarily asking for the amount, but have we done it in the last 2 years?
So if you take a look at your, the first reading budget book that was distributed, that one a few weeks ago, there's a page in there that has a history of millage.
Yeah, it's page 132. So 2023, it was 2022 was a 2.53. And then 2021 was a 3.92. but they have given a whole listing. We've been averaging somewhere between, 4 and 3, going back to 2011 where we had a 1.58. But then if you look at the history of the millage rates, as Mr. Kennedy knows very well, we ran into a serious problem. I forget what year was it? It was
I think it was fiscal year 15, I believe.
2015,
yeah.
whereas we were almost basically bankrupt because we didn't do any millage rate increases, or we did not do enough millage increases. So I know from attending a South Carolina School Board Association workshop on Thursday, every district I talked to, every board member I talked to, everybody across the state, because of this new funding formula that we're faced with this year. And this was the first year in which the state gave us a couple items that were not funded. It is affecting every district. So it's a fact of life.
Dr. Temple.
So are all the other districts running this late? Because usually we pass a budget by June 30th. So I'm looking at this timeline and thinking, having heard the testimony from our recruiters and teachers who are wanting to know what they're going to get, this just seems like this timeline is very delayed. It's a month later.
I think this was the first very important step to take today. And I appreciate Mr. Kennedy and Ms. Carlin and all the work the staff has done.
Mr. Grabowski, does that conclude your
That
section?
concludes audit finance. Thank you.
Great. Okay, so moving on to other business, item 6A, staff and position reductions to balance the FY 2024 budget. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Bill Bergman.
Thank you, Mrs. Watley. I wanted to go back, and I was trying to signal you for a second and comment though on the timeline, if I can, on approving the budget. I will say, and I've been recruiting teachers for a good, 20 years or so of my career. The sooner we can let our teachers know, and Mr. Grabowski and I have talked about this, we need to do it fairly soon. If there's even a way, it looks like there's probably a $5,000 increase across the pay schedule. And the ESSER might really be the part that's in question, but it just makes me very nervous. So I just have to put that out there. And Mr. Grabowski's been good to listen to me about it, but I just needed to say it to the board. Thank you.
And I think will be presented to the board at the board meeting, but it is a process, and staff really needs to lay it out so that all the board members understand it.
It's on the agenda to roll all of this over to the 26th.
I understand. It's just for us, it feels like we're like a month
No
behind.
man's land, yes.
So a question for Mr. Grabowski, we can investigate and give a timeline for the $5,000 from ESSER, regardless of the timeline for the budget, correct?
That's correct, but we gave them, there were other options. It wasn't just 5,000, it was 5,000, 2,000, and 3,000, just to know what the actual amount, because what you're going to have to be doing is taking money from already programs that have been allocated and finding the savings. And that's the challenge that staff's going to be up to. So as to when those funds will be available and be able to be distributed, that is separate from our budget.
And also to add to that, as was mentioned, the staff will have to reach out to the state, to whoever they need to reach out to make an amendment. So that won't be at the ESSER funding, and the bonus won't be as fast as Mr. Grabowski just said as everything else. We have to reach out and make an amendment to, after we find those savings where we're going to find them at, we have to make that amendment over, get the approval for that, and then it goes to our teachers. So the budget we'll be able to do, but we have for the ESSER funding and for the bonus, as we plan for it, we're just gonna have to keep that in mind that it's not gonna be an overnight process. When we approve the budget, the bonuses won't be coming along with it. That's an entire process that we have to get through.
So can we get a ballpark of when we think we might be able to announce a figure for the potential bonus?
I think we really need to go through the presentation. We have to give staff the permission and they have to get to working. But I mean, I feel very confident in talking to staff that it's going to happen. What is the amount and when it's going to happen? I don't know, but I feel very confident that it will happen from what we've gone through so far. And that's why we took the discussion out of it from the budget for the pay raises, because we knew that process, we didn't want to tie up the pay raises for the teachers. And that's why we put the pay raises fully into the general operating fund and not having to use, any ESSER funds to supplement that. The ESSER funds would be used solely for a bonus.
Yes, sir.
So, Dr. Temple, this evening or this afternoon, we cannot give you a specific timeline, a specific date, but I can say with some certainty that we're looking at weeks out. Number one, the board has to decide on what the dollar amount is. As Mr. Grabowski said, the committee through him asked us to take a look at different dollar amounts for a bonus. Then once that's landed, we have to take a look. So the things that the academic people talked about today, some of the strategies to get the academic gains that they were able to achieve. A lot of that was funded through the ESSER dollars, and we have submitted plans to the state for the ESSER 3 for a continuation of those strategies. And so we have to figure out, number one, what's the bonus amount? Then number two, where are we going to pull dollars from that's already been programmed and submitted to the state? And then once we do that, we have to actually amend the plan and to submit that to the state, the amended plan to the state, and that's a back and forth. We submit the plan, they ask us questions, we answer questions. So that's a back and forth process. And so it doesn't happen very quickly.
So how soon do we think we can settle on what we think the bonus is going to be? Because that, until we settle in on what the bonus is going to be, we can't start this ESSER process with the state.
I think once we get the process underway and we start looking at it, I mean, this could be a step process. We don't know. Staff's just, we need to instruct staff, give them the power to do it. And I'm confident I really am very confident that they will find it. So, but they need, there's a process, as Mr. Kenny was saying. I think it was well said. Yeah. Anyway.
We move on?
Sorry about that.
No problem.
So for other business, letter A, for staff and position reductions to balance the 2024 budget. So the ask here is permission for the superintendent to move forward with any reductions of positions that are vacant or open and positions that may have staff occupying them. That's part of balancing scenario 22 with the 7.2 mil increase. So Mr. Kennedy, I don't know if you want to comment on this.
So without a first reading budget, it's difficult to say, exactly what personnel actions really need to take place. So in the 7.1 mil recommendation that was made last month, we know exactly what we need to do. But we have the Audit and Finance Committee this last week made a recommendation that was different than the proposed recommendation that staff made in May. And so the board will have to determine what's the first reading of the budget. And that's our first step where we can definitively say this is what we need to do in terms of personnel or vacancies that exist.
So do we have a handout that shows what this is all about?
So-
There's
so-
no attachment.
Oh, I'm sorry.
There's,
So for the committee of the whole today, it's just to put the information out there at a high level. What you're asking for would have to take place in executive session. So that would be on the 26th. The 26th board meeting.
you've seen what's in 4 docs, correct? It was brought up during the agenda. And they just don't share.
Did you have a question?
They were asking more detail about what we had discussed during the agenda setting. About
Right, it needs to be an executive session item because there's some unique positions that would identify personnel. And I did check with Mrs. Paylor about that as well, just to make sure we were on the same page.
Mr. Bergman, did you have any more for items 6A, 6B, and 6C?
So that concludes 6A unless there are any other questions. So for B, these are current vacancies. So I know you have a list of vacancies. These are positions that Mr. Kennedy and I, along with some others, division heads, reviewed that we thought were mission critical, that we needed to post and start to move forward with those positions. So that's number one, current vacancies under B. And then 2 is the renewal of current interims. So as many of you know, especially with transition of leadership at times we have, it could be an interim principal, it could be a central office person, but the request to move forward with renewing those interims for the upcoming school year. An interim is a temporary type assignment until further notice, if you will. It may be reasons for an interim could be because someone's on medical leave. So we ask, for example, an assistant principal to step in as a principal, or it could be that we weren't able to fill the position and we ask someone to step in for a period of time. If once that position is posted, they certainly can apply for it and be considered and go through the regular process. But they're always considered, unless there's some reason the position is no longer there, that they would step back to their prior position if they do not remain in the interim type role.
Well, this chart that you have says these current interims expire June 30th, so
That's
are
correct.
they just going to roll over?
No, ma'am, they do not roll over. By policy, the superintendent would have to renew them for the next year. So we're prepared. We already started that paperwork process in preparation of June 30.
Okay, and it says it includes a mission critical position. What is that? What does that mean? Is it a separate position, or all these positions listed are mission critical?
The positions listed are considered mission critical to keep the business of the district moving forward.
So you're asking permission to move this to the board meeting?
Yes, ma'am, for action for June 26.
And the contract will be extended for an entire year?
No, ma'am, interims is not a contract. It's a letter, an offer letter asking someone to serve until further notice. Like, for example, if someone were out on medical leave, the person may be back in 6 weeks or a certain period of time. Or if it's a position we need to post and the person we need to apply for, then once we've hired. And there's some cases where maybe it was some ESSER type dollars or soft money, there's been a reason not to make it permanent for a period of time.
And if we don't approve this, everyone would just, let them, a current interim position, just roll back to where they were?
Yes, ma'am. That is what usually will happen unless for some reason with some of the positions we mentioned, if the position is cut, but I don't think they're eliminated. I don't think that's the case here.
Did anyone have any other questions?
And none of these
What that
positions are
letter
new.
looks like, because I couldn't find a policy.
Dr.
about this.
Temple, Ms. McKinney had the floor. Sure.
And none of these positions, the mission critical positions, are new.
I do not believe that any of them are. No.
Okay.
When you say new, you mean a new person, a new need for an
A new
interim?
position or a new
Right.
person. These are
Right. There's
roles.
one position that is new that was in human resources to continue work with Teach Charleston, our alternative route program. And it's funded through ESSER and HR.
So then I think we need the information, what's from the general fund and what's from ESSER, so we can make a better decision.
Okay, I can certainly add that.
Thank you.
Are you done? Dr. Temple?
Okay, I just would like to, I've researched what is their interim policy with regard to these positions. I couldn't find anything, so if it's done by letter. I would appreciate seeing the letter that's
Okay.
used.
Yes,
for
ma'am.
this
Dr.
kind of
Tipples, it's
issue.
very much like an offer letter for an employee that states the position and the term of the position and the salary and the supervisor. I can provide that.
Did anyone have anything else? Mr. Calhoun, Mr. Kelly?
No, I think we good, except for, yeah, we, in order to keep stability throughout the district as we make this transition, I do believe we need to go ahead and push this forward and certify these, positions that are coming off.
Mr. Kelly?
No, ma'am, I do not.
Ms. Trudy, how would you like to handle these two items? Do you want separate, break them up or break them up? Okay, so we're gonna take a vote on the first item, 6A, staff and position reductions to balance the budget. And this is to carry this over to the June 26th board meeting for consideration to authorize the superintendent to reduce staff. Do you need me to read the whole thing, the whole motion? You want me to read the whole thing? Motion to advance to the June 26th, 2023 board agenda for consideration to authorize the superintendent to reduce staff in each division as appropriate to balance the 2024 budget without directly impacting the support of schools.
I'll second that, Leah.
Thank you.
As far as discussion for this item, we did hear from Mr. Kennedy that in order for this to actually, in order for this to actually go through on the 26th, we need to know where the budget is, what scenario of the budget we're going to approve on the 26th. So if we do move this over, we will need the budget conversation to happen before this actually comes up. Because if we approve the scenario 27, this wouldn't be needed. Am I correct with that, Mr. Kennedy?
That is correct.
All right. So if we do move this over, when we make the agenda for the next meeting for the 26th, the budget needs to be before this actually shows up.
But if we go with the 7.1, we already know that it's 8.4.
Yeah.
That's correct also.
I have a parliamentary question. If we vote for 6A and 6B to go to the board meeting, that does not mean they have to, we vote again as to whether or not they're on the consent agenda, correct?
This is only the consent agenda for this meeting.
Right.
that you're voting. I mean, well, I hear what you're saying.
What I'm
You can
saying
say
is
no.
I want to see these to go to the board meeting, but I don't want them on consent because I have questions.
There has to be unanimous vote for it to go to consent anyways.
But what she's saying, I understand what you're saying.
I'm not.
When it comes up for a vote on
On
consent
C.
agenda.
Then I
at the
vote
board
no.
Meeting, you would say, I want to remove item 6A and 6B from the consent agenda. So there'll be discussion.
Well, but there's a 6C voting for potential consent agenda items is why I'm questioning it.
Well, you can not include them. in
Okay. I'm good then. Thank you.
And also, these will be in the executive session also.
Right. Yeah.
But there might be some public questions.
Just,
Yeah. So we're voting
if those are
simply
the
on
only
6A.
two going forward, you don't even take this up. You're not gonna do it.
So I want this to. I'm all confused.
So we just wanted to go for discussion.
Right, right. So if you don't want either one of them to go, right, consent agenda.
So I don't want them to go to consent, so I vote nay.
This is just.
Okay, that's my question. Right.
Please look at the board and see if your vote was accurately portrayed. Without any objection, the motion carries. Moving on to item 6B, the motion is to advance to the June 26, 2023 board meeting for consideration to approve identified critical central staff positions to include 1, current vacancies, and 2, renewal of interim assignments beyond June 30th, 2023, plus 1 mission critical interim assignment. Do I have a second? Is there a second?
Second, I'm sorry.
It's a question.
Second,
Do you need me to repeat the motion?
No, I got it, but when I asked the question, like 1 mission critical interim assignment, I said, was there a special mission critical position? What was it? And the answer was all of these items are listed as mission critical. So this motion, I don't understand what is plus 1 mission critical interim assignment. Is that correct? Motion?
It is correct. I believe when you asked your question, Dr. Tipple, I did not quite understand the one that was singled out. And then I think Mrs. McKinney may have asked a similar question. And then I mentioned the one actually in HR that
Okay.
was
I
added.
asked
And
her. All right,
we're
I get it.
considering all of them to be critical, mission critical.
And I just want to ask, in the background, it says these positions are deemed critical because they ensure that the district is in compliance with state regulations and requirements. What state regulation?
I would have to look at each position as far as, some of the compliance pieces or what we're trying to manage. And as far as moving the district forward, but I can look at that. I don't have an answer for it right now.
Yes, sir. Mr.
So
Kennedy.
what I would add is that the positions that we reviewed and bring it forward to the boards to make sure during this transitional period, both in terms of developing a budget and bringing on a new superintendent, that the district does not have any missteps in whatever processes, compliance issues that we have to deal with. So when we say mission critical, is to ensure that the operation of the district continues. And then once we get through the transitional period, then as Bill indicated, the position will be posted and then they can be filled by whomever gets selected through that process. But otherwise, these positions expire on June 30. And then at the beginning of the fiscal year, then we're not in a position to make sure that the operation of the district continues in these particular areas.
Yes, ma'am. We're good to go.
Yes.
Okay. Please look at the screen to ensure that your vote is accurately portrayed. And without any objection, the motion carries. And Ms. Trudy, on item 6C, determine agenda items moving to special or moving to potential consent agenda. I do not, unless somebody corrects me, I don't believe that we have the will to put anything on consent agenda. Right, right. We're not moving to do that. Okay, no action on that. And so on item 7, closing items, the upcoming meetings are going to be on June 26th, the regular board meeting at 5:15. And I've gotten caught not knowing what the date is for the, we have the joint meeting in July, correct, of the POW and the July 17th for the committee of the whole. And, and the board meeting, yes, it is the joint, yes, on July 17th.
Can we determine that the July 17th, because those 2 meetings will start at 2, so we can have things on our calendar and the public will know what we're doing?
I have no objection to that. Yes, sir.
So yes, July 17th. And if I recall correctly, when the board adopted the calendar, the meeting calendar for fiscal year 24, that I think there was a statement that you would not take something up on the same day, the committee of the whole, and then vote on it that same
Right.
day.
Right.
So I think in your proposed calendar, our proposed calendar, Jackie, that you presented, so I guess then we would have to have a special call board meeting in order to take up the budget. Okay, all right.
Preferably not July 4th.
Preferably,
I
preferably.
believe the
Preferably.
proposed date for that was July 10th, I believe.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
And then not shown on the upcoming meeting then would be the public hearing also.
Yeah, I completely missed the joint meeting, July 17th. Obviously, something's not right on my calendar. I apologize. For some reason, I have that we were going to meet on July 24th as a board meeting. So that messes up, no, excuse me, that puts a glitch in the 15-day public hearing ad.
So what can we do to help with that?
We could move the committee audit and finance to earlier.
Prior to July 6th,
Yeah.
like the last week of June. I guess we can talk about it.
Yeah, I think that's what, I mean, Mr. Kennedy, I think that's what would be probably is to move the committee, though, I mean, the audit and finance up quick. And then that would give this the ability to have a special meeting quicker. And then you can get your public notice out even quicker. I don't think any of the committee members are gonna.
I agree.
And
We can put out another poll to see, because I know with the poll before, we all agreed with July 6th, but I think we can go ahead and try to get that forward.
to some degree, maybe a large degree, it depends on what comes out of the June 26th meeting on the budget, on the first reading budget. So if
That's true.
if there's substantial changes coming from the board, then that's a scenario that may not allow for a quick turnaround for Audit and Finance Committee. If it's essentially the recommendation that came from the Audit and Finance Committee, then it can be a quick turnaround.
Okay, so let's clear up. Sorry, Ms. Carlin, go ahead.
So, and then another thing, my staff needs at least 3 weeks to pull together the second reading of the budget so that y'all know exactly what you're looking at. And if we're trying to back everything up a week, I don't think my staff can get all that done in 3 weeks. I mean, we are stretched so thin. I can't even begin to tell you. And I don't know if we can do it.
But I agree with Mr. Kennedy. I think if there's no major, I mean, depending on how the June 26th meeting goes. I mean, we've worked on this, especially this last 2 weeks, and with all the comments coming from the board. I mean, I hope there are no major changes, that we should be able to give you 3 weeks. I think the most important thing is getting it to the, for the public hearing.
So, well, at any rate, we've been at this for a while, for the FY24 budget. So just some sense from the governing body, from the board, as to where you all think you may be headed. The more advanced notice we can get on that, then the more opportunity the finance staff have to actually get this done right.
Because not only does it take us 3 weeks to pull it together, but then y'all want some time to review it. So we almost need 3.5, almost 4 weeks. I mean, I'm just adding it up in my head. That's why I'm a little bit, I don't know what to say.
Ms. Carlin, what do you suggest that we should do? Because y'all are the ones that are actually doing the work as far as the calendar was. And let's go ahead and let's try to plan around y'all.
Well, probably, Mr. Calhoun, we need to have some time tomorrow morning to actually analyze, and then we'll work it through Mr. Grabowski and you.
And again, I apologize for missing the July 24th date and realizing it should have been the 17th. I should have caught that.
But that's
Well,
why we're
Sam.
just, that's why before we close it out, we talk about the upcoming meeting.
Right. That's why I think we need to work around your schedule. You need to tell us what's going to work, and then.
What works for the budget, we can have a special call
right.
meeting.
When I met with staff this morning, go ahead, Anita.
No, Miss Carlin, why don't we, so we have a cabinet meeting in the morning, so why don't we make this I can adjust that agenda. Why don't we make the budget, Miss Carlin, the first item for senior staff, and we can work with you to figure out what exactly you need. And then we can circle back with Mr. Grabowski and Mr. Calhoun tomorrow and communicate with them and the chair and go from there. How does that sound? I don't mind making those adjustments to the cabinet meeting agenda at all. And then we can figure out how to support you and work within the board's timeline to make sure we can support the budget process and get this thing wrapped up. So our teachers know what to expect. Does that sound okay?
Perfect.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Okay, I'll adjust that, Mr. Kennedy, and send that to you, okay?
Ms. Carlin, how does this stand with your proposed July 10th special called meeting, or is that also kind of up in the air with everything that's been discussed?
Well, initially, whenever I talked with staff this morning, we felt really good that we could do a public hearing and a second reading on July 24th. If everything was passed and we knew what to do on June 26th.
Okay, so we don't necessarily need to do July 10th.
I just wanted to give that I just threw that out there in
Okay.
case there was additional discussion that needed to be had with the board as a whole.
Okay, so as of right now, we're announcing to the public June 26th and July 17th, and the rest will determine after the cabinet meeting in the morning.
That's
Correct.
safe. I think that's safe, Mrs. Watley. Our next board meeting is June the 26th. And then we'll look at it tomorrow morning and plan out the timeline and get with you all. And we'll make sure to work with Miss Denny and her staff to go beyond our due diligence to ensure the public is well notified in advance of the whole process, if that's amenable to the board.
Yes, ma'am, that sounds great. Thank you so much. And Ms. Huggins, thank you so much for joining us.
It's the least I can do. Thank you for having me.
All right, everyone. Thank you so much for being here. Without further ado, we will call the meeting adjourned. Everyone who Agrees, stand?